Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the Film Florida podcast. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. We also have a Film Florida merchandise page. Visit filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. Jacksonville resident Franklin Ritch is an independent filmmaker focusing on writing, directing, and editing. Collaborating with Emmy Award-winning cinematographer Britt McTammany, Franklin's early short Bedridden kicked off a number of short film productions. In 2018, he was presented the Rising Star Award by the mayor of Jacksonville. In 2022, he released his debut feature film, The Artifice Girl, starring sci-fi legend Lance Henriksen, which was screened at the Fantasia International Film Festival in Montreal, where the film won the Golden Audience Award and later took top prize at its European premiere in Italy. The film was also screened at South by Southwest and the Florida Film Festival. Franklin has also been named one of the 25 new faces of independent film by Filmmaker Magazine. We talk about a lot of this and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Franklin Ritch. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Franklin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to chat.
Excellent. So let's kind of start at the beginning. What's your origin story? Where'd you come from?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, where I still live. Yeah, I always kind of knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker as long as I could remember. But when you're a little kid, it seems kind of impossible, like wanting to be an astronaut. But I remember around 6 or 7, like watching a VHS copy of Wallace and Gromit and the Wrong Trousers. And for some reason, that tape, that experience sort of triggered this moment of like, oh, I can do that. You know, you just get some plasticine and a camera, take a frame, move it a little bit, take a frame. You know, you don't need all these sets, all this equipment, all these people. You can tell a story with just, Legos or plasticine. And so I kind of got my start doing stop motion at a very young age. And then in high school, started making short films with friends and stuff. And then got a job at a production company just out of college. And then, yeah, after working on a bunch of short films, finally putting out our first debut feature film, The Artifice Girl. And the rest is history.
So I want to talk a little bit. In high school, did you have a video production class, or was that just kind of a hobby off on the side?
No, it was really just a couple of my friends and I kind of getting together and just sort of on our own initiative. It was a very small school in Orange Park, but I was just kind of the weirdo who wanted to make films and kind of coerced my friends into it. We had a parody school news kind of segment that we did pretty weekly. And that was called the Last Resort News, which is now the name of my LLC, Last Resort Ideas. So that still has always been kind of a very important part of my journey.
Now, how about college? Did you study it officially there?
I did not. I went to Florida State University in hopes of getting into the film school, but the film school doesn't start until your sophomore semester. So my freshman year there, I kind of volunteered, and I kind of just felt like it wasn't the right place for me, and was offered a job at a production company after my first 2 semesters there. And so over that summer, I dropped out and started working at a production company back here in Jacksonville, where I felt like I really did get to have my own kind of personal film school and also get paid to learn, which was great. Getting paid to learn the craft, to learn how all this stuff works on a professional level. And so I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Now, early in your career, you worked with Emmy Award-winning cinematographer Britt McTammany when you created your early short, Bedridden. Now, this film
Yes.
was recognized at multiple film festivals. What lessons did you take from that and that experience that have kind of set you on your path?
Yeah, Bedridden was kind of in a lot of ways, the beginning of our sort of creative journey. I was so lucky to get to re-collaborate with Britt McTammany, who I had actually worked on stuff with him even when I was in high school. And he was technically my boss at that production company. That was a production company that he sort of co-ran. So getting to reunite with him for Bedridden and getting to collaborate on a project, that was the first time in a while that we had kind of sort of realized like, wow, this could really go places. And so since then, he and I have been working exclusively together. He was the director of photography on the Artifice Girl. I think his work is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. And I'm so fortunate to get to have a long lasting friendship and collaboration. And I've learned so much from him. So he's great.
Now, you mentioned Artifice Girl, which is really kind of where I want to focus a lot of this discussion. You obviously worked with Britt there, and you also had sci-fi legend Lance Henriksen in the film. And it depicts the risks of rapidly developing AI. What inspired the story, and how much did you have to learn about AI before you were able to incorporate it so much into a film?
Yeah, I remember reading several articles years ago about how these sort of CGI models and AI and stuff were being used to combat online predators and child traffickers, and I thought that was so cool. Like, what a great way to use technology for good.
Hmm.
And I thought, what kinds of interesting stories were sort of happening behind closed doors with these programmers and these developers. But that idea kind of sat dormant for a while until COVID happened. I had nothing else to do but write. So I kind of revisited that concept. It seemed like such a broad, large scale thing. I tried to find a way. Is there a way to distill this down into a very simple, like, one location, just a few characters? I sort of realized there was this sort of interrogation sequence that could take place, but I didn't really feel compelled to write anything until I had this epiphany of maybe there's a thematic parallel between the budding adolescence of AI and childhood trauma. And suddenly, once that kind of theme was sort of drawn, that sort of connection was made in my head, that's when I was like, okay, this is a story I need to tell.
Hmm.
Before I did actually any real writing, I spent about 2 weeks just doing research. I took an online course in machine learning. I had numerous phone calls and interviews with people who do this professionally, just to sort of get their insights and kind of learn the language of this world. I knew nothing about tech or AI going into this project, and I still don't feel like I really do. I feel like the film really only scratched the surface of what's possible. But to me, again, that was not really the focus. For me, it was a film about trauma and about autonomy, and that the technology and the AI stuff. And it's great to see that it's become sort of the cultural zeitgeist. It's really at the forefront of everyone's thoughts right now.
Hmm.
But for me, that was just sort of the language to tell the story.
And for those who haven't seen it or are going to see it, get a little bit deeper into what the story of the film is.
Sure. So the film is about a couple of developers working on a computer program to hunt down online predators. And as the program, begins to grow in intelligence, ethical questions start to arise as to how to approach, its future development. So yeah, there's a lot kind of going on with the story, and it seems like a very broad idea. At its core, it's about a relationship between a creator and its creation. Like you said, we were very lucky to get someone like Lance Henriksen involved, who has such a legacy with sci-fi. And for this, there's a lot of stories out there where the AI is aggressive or sort of kind of just inherently evil, HAL 9000 or the Terminator. For us, we will approach it in a different context where, if an AI was created for good, it wasn't a story about the AI taking over, but instead the AI trying to understand, should it have rights, and should it be given consent? And instead of treating an AI like Frankenstein's monster, treating AI like a child, philosophically, ethically, and all of that.
Interesting, really interesting. Now, the film has had a really successful film festival circuit. It was screened at South by Southwest as well as at the Florida Film Festival, among others here domestically. What was the experience like going to South by Southwest and doing some of the other film festivals here in the States?
Incredible. And I had never really traveled much my entire life. So to get to travel so much just in the span of a year has been amazing. Going to Montreal, which was my first time leaving the country, going to Korea this past summer, which was my first time leaving the continent. It was so great to go to all these places, but then coming home and getting to watch it in a theater full of my friends and family. It's been incredibly special. And it's been so wonderful getting to connect with all these wonderful people, so many people that are professionals in the industry and have been doing this for so long, and getting their insights. People like Mike Flanagan and Scott Derrickson, Viggo Mortensen, all these people that have been so supportive. It's been amazing.
So, in addition to some of the things you just talked about, the Artifice Girl screened internationally as well. In 2022, you presented it at the Fantasia International Film Festival in Montreal. You mentioned that, where the film won the Golden Audience Award and later took top prize at the European premiere in Italy. Talk about going around the world for some of those things. You mentioned some of the experiences, but also winning some of those awards and getting that recognition.
Yeah, I never anticipated that. Again, this being our first feature film, it was incredibly validating to feel like people understood what we were doing and that they had immersed themselves in the story and that it was resonating. That was incredibly validating, and we're super grateful that it's been winning awards and it's been doing so well. It's a topic and a conversation that a lot of people are itching to have right now. I think it came out at the perfect time, even though I wrote it back in 2020. The fact that it came out in 2023, right at this sort of peak of the AI conversation. That's, I think, been just kind of serendipitous, and I'm super grateful for that.
So where does the film go from here?
Well, it's available to get on Amazon and iTunes, and I think it's also available to watch on Tubi. At this point, it's gonna just be a matter of time to see how much staying power the film has. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I do think people are still going to be talking about AI. The conversation that people are having now and people will probably continue to have might be a little different than the conversations happening in the film because the film sets this particular AI in a very altruistic scenario, whereas AI in our real world is often being used to, unfortunately, exploit human labor and undermine the value of human creativity. So we'll see. But I do think one thing that the film says that I do maintain is that AI will always be a reflection of the people who make it. If it's used for good, it'll be good. If it's used for bad, that's what it'll be. So I think we need to be mindful and thoughtful and compassionate when using AI.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. We've seen a lot of those discussions within our industry in terms of the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike and how important AI and the uses there. So you're absolutely right there. You're a native of Jacksonville, and you mentioned that in an article or that I read that you hope that the Artifice Girl will help launch a film boom in your hometown. Talk about your goal and your vision for filmmaking in Northeast Florida.
Absolutely. I think Jacksonville has a huge amount of untapped potential for film. I think it would be in a lot of creatives' best interest to start telling their stories in Jacksonville and to start bringing productions here. I think it would be in the city's best interest to encourage more of that as well, to encourage its local storytellers. And we have some really talented people living here, encouraging its local storytellers to tell their stories and to make their films and to support those creatives, and then also to get outsiders to come to Jacksonville to tell their stories. It's such a diverse kind of landscape. It's got so many different kind of interesting locations. You've got a coastal beach 30 minutes away from a downtown area. There's so much wonderful potential here, and I really hope that films like The Artifice Girl will start to promote Jacksonville in that way. I would really like to see. It was originally going to be where Hollywood, back in the silent era with Laurel and Hardy, Jacksonville was going to be Hollywood, and that didn't pan out. But hey, it's never say never. Maybe there's a chance we could bring that history back.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville and all of Northeast Florida has such a rich history in our industry dating back literally 100+ years. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, it would be great to see it come full circle. Absolutely. That would be fun. Now, in 2018, you were presented with the Rising Star Award by the mayor of Jacksonville. How did that come about? What was that like?
One of my dear good friends and longtime mentors. Her name is Sharon Cobb, and she is a professional screenwriter here in Jacksonville. And I think she nominated me for the award, and I was very grateful and still am. It was definitely a moment. I will say it was really humbling and wonderful for people to acknowledge that there was potential because I have a lot of crippling self doubt and anxiety and imposter syndrome. So I think it was really nice for the city and for the mayor and for, of course, Todd Rubin, our film commissioner, to graciously present me that award. One of my favorite moments about that whole experience was sitting next to my mother and father, and I think my father leaned over to my mother and said, I think we need to start getting used to stuff like this. It was just such an extravagant event, and everybody was dressed so nicely. And it was just sort of this moment of, maybe this isn't just a phase. Maybe he's not going to grow out of this whole filmmaking thing. And that was very validating. But I know that there have been a lot of really terrific recipients of that award, and I'm very grateful that I get to be among one of them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, in The Artifice Girl, you were credited as being the writer, director, and editor. Did you find your work as the director and editor benefiting from your writing? Talk about that process of being all three of those, being such different parts of the process.
For me personally, and I understand how, every film is different, every situation is different, but for my personal creative process, I feel like I have to be in all three critical stages: pre-production, production, and post-production. I couldn't see myself only doing one or even two of those things without the third one. Filmmaking is about sharing a vision, and for me, it doesn't just end once the script is written. The film has to be executed with kind of the post-production process in mind as well. I wrote the film knowing how I was going to edit it, or at least how I was intending to edit it. And now obviously you have to be open to inspiration along the way, and open to other perspectives, and be receptive to collaboration. But I hope that in my future projects, I'm also writing, directing, and editing. I don't know if I'll be acting in my own work ever again. That was sort of out of necessity due to our budgetary constraints, but I definitely do love all three aspects of the process: the crafting of a story, the collaboration with actors on a set, and of course the final stages of piecing all of the footage together and building the story in the editing room.
So, how critical were you while you were editing the stuff that you acted in?
I had to sort of disassociate in post production, and you just got to try and separate yourself from the character and say, okay, well, this is what he did. Past Franklin, this is what he did. So this is what I've got to work with. I only felt comfortable playing one of the lead roles because I had such a strong trust in my director of photography, Britt McTammany, who was behind the camera, and my fellow cast members. I'd worked with all of them in numerous capacities, including acting and directing. I felt comfortable in what I was doing because I knew that if I needed help, they would be there to support me. And so that actually made for a really great collaborative process on set as one of the cast members, getting to kind of sort of not just be the chef, but be in the soup itself. It was actually quite great.
Now, at least once a week, I get phone calls, emails from independent filmmakers who say, I have this script, but I don't have any money to produce it. You've been there, but you've also done it. So, what advice do you give for filmmakers who have that script and are struggling to figure out how to get it made? And then once it's made, what to do with it afterwards?
Sure. I feel like I might not be the right person to ask this, because I'll tell you how we did it with Artifice Girl. I wrote this script. We looked at it. We said, okay, it would cost this much to make. We don't have that much. But, this whole first act, basically the first 40 minutes of the film, we could shoot that for practically nothing. We could pay our cast and crew and get away with shooting that first act for hardly anything. So that's what we did. We kind of got together with no producer, no studio, no funding, really, just a small amount of money we scrambled together and shot the first act of the film. And then after we had that first 40 minutes of film, I cut it together. Britt did the color, I did the sound, and then we packaged it, put a little thing at the beginning of just us sort of introducing the film. And we packaged it as a proof of concept, and then sent that out to people that we knew in the industry. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for producers who looked at it and said, you've the first half of this movie, and this is how much you need to finish it. Go for it. Yeah, I think just as independent filmmakers, it's always about perceiving your obstacles as opportunities. So if you can only afford one location, well, tell a story that works well in one location. Let's say you're shooting in the middle of a pandemic, and okay, these characters can't get too close to each other, then figure out a way to make that work. That's sort of the key to success as an independent filmmaker, being open to creative inspiration when addressing problems.
Well, you brought up a really good point in that. Quick story. Film Florida gives away small grants, very small grants, and we receive applications from people, and we read them. The committee that evaluates reads them, and some of them are tremendous, and they're really great. But we look at it and say, okay, this person has zero money collected. How are they going to execute this script? The $2,500 that Film Florida might be giving them is nowhere near enough to execute. So we will turn down some scripts sometimes because we know that our money is not enough to do what it is they have on paper. Contrast that with what you did was put together a story, being realistic, knowing your budget constraints. You were still be able to be very creative. You were still able to tell a great story, but you were realistic in balancing that. And some filmmakers I find are just not flexible in understanding the realities of how to make a film. And so you might have a great concept, but if you can't make it, it doesn't matter how great that script is, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that takes experience. You have to get out there and you have to try and fail in order to learn. Okay, but why did I fail? That's what the past 10 years of my life have essentially been all about, is learning through making those wonderful mistakes and then understanding how to improve and how to adapt and understanding what it really takes to make a film. Yeah, it's great to have these big, crazy ideas, but you're always going to find constraints and you're always going to have obstacles. And like I said, it's just perceiving those obstacles as opportunities. That happens time and time again. That is just sort of the nature of filmmaking. For instance, there was a moment in one of our rehearsals where a character is supposed to open a door aggressively, and our stand-in opened the door very aggressively, and the doorknob punched a hole into the wall. And I had like a panic attack because I was like, we're going to be shooting, tomorrow. And now I got to go to Home Depot and get the plaster and get and fill in this hole. I was like, we don't have time for this. Right. And then right in that sort of moment where you're just like, let's just give up because of this stupid hole. And someone was like, I guess there's no way to like make it part of the story, is it? And then suddenly it's just like, you know what? Let's see what would happen if that like happened in the moment in the scene. And then that becomes like this very kind of wonderful sort of moment of realism in the film where a character accidentally punches a hole in the wall. It's stuff like that. You just kind of have to you keep pivoting and you keep adapting. You have to do that.
That's a great story. So tell us what's next for you and where people can find out more about you and the film and everything going on.
Sure. I feel like there was, we just got out of a strike. So things are starting to come back and I can start working on stuff again. But I'm very excited about the next project. It's going to be so ambitious and so exciting. After Artifice Girl, I was like ready to make another small film, and just because of the reaction and all the conversations I've had with people, everyone's saying, "No, we want to see like what you can do with a lot. If you had the moon, what would you do?" And so getting to explore that has been really exciting. And of course, there's going to be times where like you said, with any project you have to adapt, you have to be realistic. But right now getting to sort of working on a project that I think could be really exciting. I definitely feel as though I want to explore sort of broader genres. I don't necessarily want to stay confined to the small stripped down heady sci-fi, but I also feel as though there's so many elements of the Artifice Girl and the things that people like about it that you're going to see kind of given even more maturation and intrigue in these next couple projects. So I'm really excited to keep telling stories. I'm really excited with the people that I'm going to be working with. I'm really excited that everybody that I'll have worked with on Artifice Girl is also going to be involved, and I'm just super excited for the next things to come. But yeah, does that answer the question? I apologize, I forgot what the question was.
No, that was great. And I mean, anything else you want to plug? Websites, social media, anything like that?
Not at the I mean, you can find me on Instagram. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you liked The Artifice Girl, you'll find a bunch of really interesting short films and other things that we've done over the years. If I ever do anything, you'll hear about it first on our YouTube channel. So it's called Last Resort Ideas. And you can subscribe for free.
That's awesome. So Franklin, first of all, congratulations on the success thus far. Continued
Thank you.
success going forward. We appreciate you spending time with us today, and thanks so much for being on the Film Florida podcast.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org and like or follow our social media pages. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please consider going to our website and donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. Check out Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.